Hello, my name is Jenna Shahoven. Today I'd like to discuss Rosemary's Baby and feminist theory. I will also touch on genre and auteur theory while discussing director Roman Polanski. Throughout this presentation, I hope to show the intricate cinematography and acting performances that can be applied to feminist theory. I'll discuss certain thematic patterns I recognize, such as paranoia, gaslighting, as well as common female stereotypes represented in Rosemary and other characters. I'll finish with critic reviews on the material and my overall opinion. Feminist theory can be defined as the undervaluing of women in literature has long been accepted as the norm, and feminist theory seeks to expose it. What I'll be talking about is male gaslighting by Guy, paranoia of Rosemary because of everyone's sneaky behavior, and the submissive wife and damsel in distress stereotypes, as well as how Rosemary either reaffirms or denies those stereotypes. Genre theory plays into this movie because it's hard to tell what genre this movie is. The horror genre conventions pertain to setting, themes, narratives, and shot types. In Rosemary's Baby, they had a sinister setting that felt isolated from the rest of the world, an apartment building with a horrible past of violence and death. Then comes the themes of the occult and insanity. Witches and Satan worshippers are the main figures in this film. One horror narrative that fits this convention is the hero is also the victim. Rosemary is the victim of gaslighting and sexual assault, but she's also seen as the main protagonist in the movie. Finally, the iconic shot types like aerial and point of view. We see aerial shots at the beginning and end of the movie as the camera moves closer and then farther away from the apartment building. The knife scene with Rosemary in the Cassavet's apartment follows the point of view shot convention of horror. However, some believe the psychological aspects of this movie make it more of a psychological thriller than a horror film. Roman Polanski is known for being a phenomenal director, but is he an auteur? I believe he is. Visual cues like his use of half-hidden characters and recurrent themes like voyeurism and violence all point to Polanski having a unique style. We see both of these examples in Rosemary's Baby. One reviewer said, "One never needed to search for Polanski in his own work. His style has remained dominant in most of his films and never takes much effort to seek out." Starting off, I'd like to show the scene where Rosemary first wakes up after her traumatic night.
What time did I go to sleep?
You didn't go to sleep. You passed out. From now on, you get cocktails or wine, not cocktails and wine, huh?
The dreams I had.
Don't yell. I already filed them down. I didn't want to miss baby night.
You...
And a couple of
While
my
I was
nails were
out?
ragged, and it was kind of fun in a necrophile sort of way.
Here we see Guy try to explain away the mysterious scratches on Rosemary's body. He places doubt in her mind, trying to confuse her enough to let it go. Back then, it was still legal for a man to rape his wife, which I believe is what keeps Rosemary's reaction so timid. She never threatens to call the cops or really put up any kind of major fight. When Guy explains he only did it because he didn't want to miss baby night, he proceeds to mention he liked it in a necrophile sort of way. Rosemary verbally hits back by asking why he couldn't have waited, and he makes another excuse. Throughout the scene, you can see the slight worry on Guy's face as he gauges whether or not she believes him. This is where Rosemary starts getting paranoid. She can't remember what happened, but has an odd dream of an inhuman beast sexually assaulting her. Rosemary ends up going along with it because what else was she going to do? Leave her husband? She couldn't even have her own bank account yet. For this scene, at Dr. Hill's office, I want to talk about two stereotypes for women and one for men.
I was sleeping.
I always think, dun 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 dun, whenever they come in, whenever the men come in.
Come with us quietly, Rosemary. Don't argue or make a scene. Because if you say anything more about witches or witchcraft, we're going to be forced to take you to a mental hospital. You don't want that, do you? So put your shoes on.
Notice Dr. Saperstein's appearance in this shot. The way that Polanski made it so that you could only see his midriff was very specific and a common thing that he did in a lot of his films.
We just want to take you home. No one's going to hurt you.
For the baby. Put your shoes on.
The submissive housewife is as old as time in America. We know these women as cleaners, bakers, and caretakers. They stay at home all day and wait for their husbands to come home. In this particular scene, Rosemary is putting this stereotype to shame. She takes her life in her own hands and finds a way to get to Dr. Hill for help. Sadly, we all know another common stereotype for women is being overdramatic, and thus men feel the need to invalidate every female concern. Before she wakes from her nap, she dreams of her and her baby surrounded by families and friends, only to wake up to the two men who have been manipulating and deceiving her since she moved into that apartment. Dr. Hill didn't believe that a coven of witches could be housed in New York City, let alone try and poison a pregnant lady. Secondly, there's the damsel in distress. This stereotype is defined by a weak, beautiful woman who needs a man to come and save her. She is dependent on others for her own well-being. Again, Rosemary defies this stereotype by seeking help for herself. She realizes she's alone and decides to start controlling her own story. Dr. Saperstein plays the stereotype of the older controlling male. He gives her an ultimatum, but it isn't a choice and he knows it. He goes on to grab her arm, pull her up off the couch, walk her through the door and into the taxi waiting on the street. For my last scene, I'd like to point out how Rosemary represents women.
Rosemary, go back to bed. You know you're not supposed to be up and around.
Is the mother?
Rosemary.
Shut up.
Rosemary.
Shut up, you're in Dubrovnik. I don't hear you.
Did you notice how she just ignored everyone and didn't care? Those motherly instincts just kicked in.
Rosemary,
Now she's taking a
go back to bed. You
gander
know you're
around the
not
room to
supposed to
make
be
sure
up
she's
and
still
around.
safe.
The mother?
Rosemary.
Shut up.
Rosemary.
Shut up,
Until
you're in
finally she makes her
Dubrovnik.
way
I
over
don't hear
to
you.
the carriage to see as soon as she starts to realize what's going on, that dark, eerie music starts to creep in. At first, she was your all-American, stay-at-home wife, who was content with decorating her new apartment and waiting for her husband to return home. As the movie progresses, we see Rosemary's intuition grow as well. She no longer believes everything the people around her are saying. This follows closely with most women nowadays. We start innocent and naive, but through our own time on Earth, we start to develop certain protection mechanisms to keep us safe. For example, the quick turning of Rosemary's head, making sure she can see everyone. She stands in front of the crib and double checks her surroundings again. I think this is a societal criticism of how women feel surrounded by a society that don't support them. We also see representations of wife and mother in this scene. We see Guy awkwardly behind walls facing away, not making eye contact, and not saying anything at his wife, who comes in wielding a knife. Rosemary looks to Guy for help in this situation, but can't even get him to look at her. I think Guy was trying to avoid her for as long as possible because he knew as soon as she saw the baby, she would put two and two together and realize he sold her body to the devil for a successful career. The cinematography in this film also adds to the representation of women. The point of view shot at the beginning of the scene makes the audience feel what's coming even though they already know what's happened. Polanski never gave us an eyeline match to the baby in the crib. However, we see Mia Farrow's eyes bulge from her head, but Polanski is still careful not to reveal the baby. We get a quick fade-in of the devil's eyes as she realizes what's happened to her. It gives a spike of fear looking into the devil's eyes because it reminds viewers of seeing those eyes earlier in the movie. My favorite part of this scene is the quiet anticipation of Rosemary walking to the crib. She looks around at everyone and it's quiet. Not until she sees her baby's eyes does the almost tribal music start to play loudly in the background, symbolizing her access to this new knowledge. The first critic review I came across was one by Penn Moviegoer. In this review, the critic describes the film as not scary in a bloody, gory sense, but rather a psychological one, making you doubt relationships, first impressions, trust, and God. I like that she mentioned the loss of trust in God. During the 60s, there was so much satanic worship going on, I'm sure others were having crises of faith. This movie put a spotlight on the way life experiences can change your view of higher power, especially in a movie like this where the main character is surrounded by devil worshippers. The second review by Roger, it talked about the outstanding performances and specifically how Polanski made the film what it is. Roger says, when the conclusion comes, it works not because it is a surprise, but because it is horrifyingly inevitable. Rosemary makes her dreadful discovery, and we are wretched because we know what was going to happen and we couldn't help her. This is one way Polanski creates extreme, on-the-edge-of-your-seat tension, because you know all the facts, you are just waiting to see what the character's reaction to those facts will be. Finally, the third reviewer talked about what came before Rosemary's Baby that influenced the movie later on. She also touches on the auteur theory and Polanski's involvement in making this movie art. Lieber explained, no one believes Rosemary when she tells them what's going on, but we do because we've seen it all happen to her. This is another way I think Polanski turned up the tension. We are an omniscient audience. We see everything and know the truth about everything, but we are powerless to stop what will happen to the character. This common theme is not being able to save Rosemary also points to the classic damsel in distress stereotype. Why as an audience do we feel the need to save her? Because we don't think she can save herself? Rosemary's Baby was a great movie by a great director, and I couldn't have asked for a better movie to analyze, especially when it comes to feminism. Considering Rosemary's life and just how she went about being a woman in this time, she played her part as long as she could, and then it came to the health of her baby, and she was just not going to take it. Through feminist theory, genre theory, auteur theory, every other kind of theory there is, I've been able to analyze and appreciate more the value of Rosemary's Baby. Thanks!